Hi, I'm Stephanie Swanberg, the Government and Regional Affairs Director for the Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to Session Spotlight. This short, business-focused weekly update spotlights legislative happenings in Olympia that are relevant to the Tri-Cities business community. We are now in week 15 of the 2021 legislative session, which is scheduled to adjourn in just 5 short days. Between now and April 25th, lawmakers in both the House and Senate will be considering last-minute changes to bills that are still alive. If a House bill goes to the Senate, or vice versa, and is passed with an amendment, it must come back to the Chamber of Origin for concurrence. The refusal to concur means that formal negotiations begin to see if a compromise can be reached. Then the negotiated bill must pass both chambers to be sent to the governor. The legislature will be debating and negotiating priority legislation this week, but most importantly, they still must finalize and pass the state's 3 big spending bills, the operating, capital, and transportation budgets. Under Washington state law, a budget is the only legislation that must be passed before the legislature can adjourn, or they will face a special session. The biennial operating budget pays for most day-to-day operations of state government. The transportation budget pays for roads, public transit, and related investments. The capital budget supports construction, acquisition, and maintenance of public schools, higher education facilities, state buildings, public lands, parks, and other assets. So let's begin with the operating budget. This budget bill passed out of the House last week, 57-41, right along party lines. But because the Senate refused to concur on House amendments, the measure is now in a conference committee and will come to the House floor for a vote, most likely just before the legislature adjourns on April 25th. The operating budget of nearly $60 billion proposed for the next biennium assumes passing a controversial capital gains income tax, even though tax collections have rebounded and grown by 13.6%. The capital budget is typically a much easier budget to pass with bipartisan support. This year, the $5.7 billion House capital budget passed with unanimous support. This budget is now in conference and still needs final approval, but I anticipate that projects will be funded when the House and Senate reconcile. Lastly, a $10.9 billion biennial transportation budget has passed, which works as both an operating and capital budget for our state's transportation system. It funds infrastructure projects across the state, including the Washington State Department of Transportation, maintenance and preservation of current transportation systems, the Washington State Patrol, the Washington State Ferry System, and other transportation agencies. The proposed House transportation budget would spend just over $10.9 billion for the 2021 budget cycle. Much of the spending continues the highway projects started under Connecting Washington. A $30 car tab amendment was defeated along party lines. 5165 is currently in conference committee after the Senate did not concur with House amendments. Speaking of transportation policy, both the House and Senate have now passed the governor's low carbon fuel standard bill, which means the cost of fuel will increase. The LCFS received a 27-20 vote after a series of amendments were added that key Democrats say must remain to maintain their support. Yet that may prove more than what the House lawmakers are willing to accept. And Senate Bill 5126 has now passed the Senate and is in executive session this morning in the House Appropriations Committee. The Cap and Trade Bill directs the Department of Ecology to implement a cap on greenhouse gas emissions from certain entities and a program to track, verify, and enforce compliance. A public hearing was held last Wednesday in the House Environment and Energy Committee. Out of the 1,500 people who signed in to testify or provide their views on the bill, over 1,000 opposed the measure. A major sticking point for LCFS and Cap and Trade is that they required Forward Washington or another transportation package that spends more than $500 million per biennium to be enacted before they take effect. With the LCFS proposal, that transportation package mandate is among the provisions that must remain if it is to receive necessary support for concurrence in the Senate. while the Cap and Trade Bill funds a vital portion of Forward Washington. Without its passage, Forward Washington would either require significant revisions to make up for the revenue loss or be replaced entirely with a new proposal. Further complicating the transportation package is $5 billion in bonding authorization that requires a 60% majority in both chambers, thus Republican support in order to pass. House Bill 1097 is a bill that has drawn contentious debate in both House and Senate. The bill, requested by Governor Jay Inslee, proposes new policies related to workplace safety violations and penalties. While proponents say new regulations are needed to protect workers, many legislators say the bill unfairly favors workers over employers. It passed out of both chambers and now heads to the governor's desk to be signed into law. State senators convened April 15th to vote on the concurrence over House amendments to Senate Bill 5172, an act that aims to modify overtime standards for farm workers. Unlike most employees, ag workers are not paid time and a half if they work for over 40 hours a week. The bill eliminates the overtime exemption for farm workers by 2024, and it establishes a phased-in approach to provide them overtime pay. The Senate voted on the bill as amended, and the bill now moves to the governor's desk for signature. With broad bipartisan support, both houses of the legislature have passed an expanded version of the Working Family Tax Credit. Governor Jay Inslee, who has long supported the policy, is expected to sign it into law. Starting in 2023, an estimated 420,000 Washingtonians will receive rebates of between $300 and $1,200. On Thursday, the House took the bill to a final vote. It passed 93-3. With concurrence from both chambers, the bill heads to the governor's office. House Bill 1236, another contentious bill, aims to regulate landlord-tenant relations during COVID. It passed out of the Senate with amendments, with a vote of 54-44 along party lines. The next stop is now the governor's desk to be signed into law. Now let's circle back to the capital gains tax. Backers of the bill say it's targeted at the wealthy, but opponents say the tax opens the door to a statewide income tax. Senate Bill 5096, which has already passed the Senate, is now passed out of the House Finance Committee and was placed on second reading, setting the stage for a floor debate and final passage. A bill sponsored by Representative Matt Binkie that seeks to double the number of manufacturing jobs in Washington by 2031 has been signed into law by Governor Jay Inslee. House Bill 1170 will provide a framework for the state to add 300,000 new manufacturing jobs and double the number of small manufacturing firms and the number of women and minority-owned manufacturing firms over the next 10 years. House Bill 1170 will go into effect July 25th. And finally, the Senate has debated House Bill 1336, which would give broad authority to public utility districts, port districts, and other public entities to provide retail telecommunications services like broadband to residents and their service areas. After strikers were adopted on 1336 and 5383, they are now both on third reading and awaiting a floor debate and vote. As we head into the last 5 days of session, the Tri-City Regional Chamber will continue to be your voice for business. Thanks for watching.